And so one of my greatest teachers of love was this beloved monk and friend, Ma Ghosananda, who was the Gandhi of Cambodia. And we practiced together in the forest monasteries, and I helped him in the refugee camps after the Cambodian Holocaust, when almost a quarter of the population was killed by the Khmer Rouge. And we were on the border between Thailand and Cambodia in these UN camps, Sakeo, Khao I Dung, and so forth, with hundreds of thousands of refugees in this very arid place with wire all around it and so forth. And all 19 members of his family had been killed. His temple had been burned. But he was in Thailand in the forest with me during that time, and he was one of the few elders to remain. He then became the head of all of the Cambodian Buddhist community. But in the camps, he said, we have to bring something back to these people. They've had some years now of horror. And so we went to the UNHCR and said, can we open a Buddhist temple in the middle of the camp? And they gave permission, and so we got some help to make a big platform, a little roof, and put an altar there, and made it look a little bit like the most primitive temple you would have found in a village in Cambodia. And then he said, let's call people who want to come and sit with us. But the Khmer Rouge Underground, which was there in every camp, let it be known that if anybody went into that temple or went there, that when they got back to Cambodia, they would be shot and killed. So we thought, all right, well, let's see how many people come. Went through the camp that day ringing this big temple gong, and 25,000 people streamed into the central square to sit. And there was Ma Ghosananda sitting and looking out at the crowd, and you could see there would be, one uncle and two of his nieces, and that was all that was left of the family, a grandmother and a few children. Everyone else had been killed. And the faces of trauma, which we will be teaching a lot about as we go on later on how to deal with trauma. But sitting in the presence of that, you could feel all their suffering. And I thought, all right, what can he say in the face of this measure of sorrows? He's a very pure-hearted being. He put his hands together quite humbly, and he began to chant in Pali, Sanskrit, and in Cambodian, one of the very first verses from the Buddhist texts that goes, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. He began to almost sing it, chant it. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the ancient and eternal law. And he chanted it over and over, and people began to weep because they hadn't heard these words for years since the temples were burned. And they began to sing it with him. Pretty soon, 25,000 people were chanting this. And what I felt was that somehow he spoke a truth that was even bigger than the sorrows that they carried. Hatred never ends by hatred, but by love alone is healed.